why don't we go ahead and get started? I already introduced myself, John Tishy, Assistant Treasurer. Cindy, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Stewart. I was the treasurer here for several years, and John asked me to help out. Nice to see everybody online and those in person.
Yeah. So today's presentation is, the purpose of this is to seed ideas. We're not here to make a heavy sell. We're not here to give you detailed financial or tax advice. But what we do want to do is just make you familiar with ideas that might be useful for you in the future, or whether that future is next week, next month, next year, next decade. So just planting ideas, familiarizing folks with them, and then you can ask us, you can ask your financial advisor, you can ask a trusted relative, more, and learn more about the different things that we bring up today. So with that prelude, are the slides being shown to Zoom? Would you go to the second slide? So firstly and most importantly, thank you for your support of the church. And that bears repeating, thank you. We know there are lots of needs in the world, and there are lots of ways to do good and to support good causes. Thank you for supporting this cause in all the ways that you do. Next slide, if you would. The second most important thing, as my wife often says, there's more than one right answer to how to give, how to support your church. And part of this is showing the different right answers that are available. But it ultimately gets back to you and what works for you and your situation. So more than one right answer. Keep that in mind. So then next slide. So we talked about the most common ways to give. This actually puts some numbers behind it over the last 3 years of giving. You see personal check is number one for the church. Number two, using our online site. Very little of that so far is using the smartphone app, but I'm hoping that people will give that a try. It is a good way to donate, and since many people carry their phones with them everywhere, that's, people do a lot of things on their phones, and it's fairly easy to do. As I said in my talk earlier, there are instructions on the donate website, and also I can certainly help you as well. And then the next two items, stock donations, donor advised funds, Cindy will talk about in just a minute. As I noted earlier, in 2021, for the 2021 tax year, there is a benefit. There's the ability to deduct up to $300 per person or $600 per couple filing jointly, even if you use the standard deduction on your federal taxes. So be aware of that. If you aren't, if you take the standard deduction, you're not sure if there's any benefit to any tax benefit to your charitable donations. If you go to the next slide, please. Personal check, fairly easy. Number two was online. Our online site, cpcchurch.org/donate, gives you a variety of different options. Included on there are the links to download the app and set it up, and instructions on how to set it up. Many people in the church use online giving. It's easy. You can do it one time, do one-off, or you can do recurring donations, and we have people who do both. So any questions about online or personal checks, or generally, the general theme of today's talk? As Holly said earlier, if you are on Zoom, use the raise your hand. I believe there's a button in Zoom to do that. Yes, I'm getting nods. So if you have those questions, feel free to raise them, and we'll try to answer them. Seeing none at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy to talk about the next couple of kinds of ways that you can give.
Great, thank you, John. I also just want to make sure I put a plug in. John actually prepared all of these slides, so nice job.
Next slide, please.
Next slide. Again, one of the great things about this presentation and for people to know is there are so many different ways that you can give to the church. You can do your regular pledge in the previous ways that John mentioned, but you can also pledge on a regular basis or even one time or, as often as you'd like. Often is good by making a stock donation. And up until Friday, the market was doing fabulously. And anybody who has any kind of stock portfolio has probably seen a strong appreciation in that value. But we at Cleveland Park Church can actually take stock as a donation, and that also can be part of your pledge, so you can meet your obligation that way. The slide talks about the details of how to actually do that. We have done it before. We've received stock from folks before, so we're pretty comfortable doing that. And Robert Glass has helped us a lot with monetizing that stock. And so if that's something you do want to do, we really strongly recommend that you have a conversation with Robert if you're comfortable, or John as well, if that's something you'd like to do, because there are some steps to it. There are things you have to do as the owner and the holder of that stock. There are things we have to do in preparation for being able to accept it and then monetize it and take it in as your donation. The really great thing about this is you're not writing a check and you're not going online, but that's okay. It is a tax deduction to you to be able to do that, and so you don't have to pay tax on the gain. If you pay $2 a share and it's now worth 55, and you donate 7 or 8 shares of that to the church, you're not paying any tax on the gain of the value of that stock. But yet you're doing the church a great service by giving that stock to us. Yeah, and you actually get to take the deduction of what the value is. So it's a real win-win situation to donate stock. It really is. So if you would like to consider that, we strongly recommend it. We cannot take mutual funds, so it has to actually be a stock, a traded stock. So it cannot be a fund. That's something like many people, 401ks or IRAs, are invested into mutual funds as opposed to individual stocks. So that's just something to be aware of as well. Next slide.
Any questions on stock donations before we move on?
Oh, that's okay. That's none.
Seeing none, yes.
Okay. Donor advised funds is also another method, and I have to admit, I'm fairly recently retired, and I was ignorant of this ability to actually do this. This too is a really great vehicle for us. This has to be done with whomever is managing your stocks and or mutual funds, or whoever has your money. For example, mine's with Fidelity. Fidelity has a site you can go and just click on that talks about the donor advised functionality that they have. It's very easy to access, very easy to do. And you get to designate where that money goes. And Cleveland Park Church is a qualified 501c3 nonprofit, so it is qualified to receive the funds. So that's usually one of the first things that gets asked is you have to verify that your charity or nonprofit actually qualifies, and we do. And you have various options, and again, you really have to talk to your advisor to understand a lot of the details of this, but the fund takes money from many donors and can actively invest it so it can build, or you can direct the money to be donated immediately or at some time in the future to that nonprofit. And again, the great thing when you do that is it's actually tax deductible, but you take the deduction when you make that donation. So if you, I'll use round numbers, if you have $1,000 that you put in that fund that you want to go to Cleveland Park, you get to take your $1,000 tax deduction that year. If you do it this year or next year, that's the year you get to take your deduction. If you don't want to distribute it yet to the church, that's okay. They'll hold it. They will actually invest it. You can direct them to make that distribution at some future point. It could actually have grown, hopefully. That would be even better. You do not get to take the deduction for that because it's now gone into the actual fund. Let's see. Yes, that's pretty much it. I mean, again, it's something you should really talk to your advisor about. I had a great conversation with mine because I was a little nervous, to be honest with you. I was like, well, I'm just putting money into a big fund that has, that they're going to invest. How do I know that my money is going to be okay, that it's going to end up going to where I want it to go? This can actually be part of an estate plan as well. You don't even have to do it like now. You could put money in there, it could build upon your death, it can then be distributed to whoever you designate. So my advisor was great in answering questions and explaining that. So there's a variety of things that you can do, but it's very easy. So you could even take part of your IRA that's sitting there, which is how I learned about this, and redirect it into this. So it's another great method of how to give to the church.
Yeah, if I may add, that's also one way. If you have mutual funds that are appreciated, your donor advised fund may be able to accept the mutual fund. Our particular financial unit that does direct stock donations only does stock, but your donor advised fund may be able to accept stock or bond or mutual funds, however your money is held currently. And then, say you have a large amount that you want to donate, you want to put in for donation, you get that immediate tax deduction that year for the full market value of what you donate. And then you could then make a plan to donate that in increments over the next 3 or 5 or 7 years. And it could be part of kind of a plan for giving and supporting the causes that you care about. So.
And it is a really good tax management tool. So if you find you might potentially be in a tax situation where you want to mitigate your tax liability, you can make it that donation and take that deduction that year. And then it still can sit there, as John said, then you have a lot more flexibility in how you want to direct it or when you want to direct it.
Any questions about donor advised funds? Seeing none. I guess why don't you move to the next item?
The qualified charitable distribution, again, I think because I'm recently retired, nice that John gave me these slides to talk about. And I am not 70 and a half yet, but once you reach 70 and a half, you are required to take there's a minimum required distribution that you have to take from an IRA or, other types of accounts that you might have, mutual funds, different investments. It's a tax requirement, and you have to take that money. For some people, depending on your individual situation, by taking those distributions, it could put you into a tax event. And one of the ways to strategically minimize that or avoid it is to take that distribution and redirect it to the church. So that way you don't actually take it as income. So it doesn't activate a tax event for you personally. You directed it and made the donation to the church. These are also great. It's a great vehicle to manage tax situations once you're 70 and a half. If you're younger than that, this doesn't apply to you yet. Something to think about, though. We all will be there sooner or later. And it also keeps your taxable event lower, and you don't. Oh yeah, you don't have to actually itemize. So you don't have to be. You can keep your standard deduction actually on that too. So you don't have to claim it as income. So it's not taxable. You also get to claim it as a deduction as far as a donation to the church. So again, another kind of double benefit.
Actually, no. Since you never received the income, you don't get to claim it as an income.
Oh, that's right. The qualified. Yes, thank you, John. Thank you. Right, because you've already received it as part of your retirement. Right.
Well, the benefit is the question was, so there's no tax benefit. The answer is yes, there is, because you don't receive the income, which would increase your tax liability. That's the theory of that.
Right, because typically when you have a required distribution, you'd have to claim that as income. Right, yeah. So there's no income, so there's no income tax, but you do get to take a deduction. Yes. So those are, there is a double benefit there, if you will. The downside is, I guess you want to call it a downside, is you have to be 70 and a half to be able to do that. So, but it's something to think about when you're planning down the road.
Any questions about qualified charitable distribution? Okay.
Great.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Yes?
Yes,
Okay, I didn't realize, I was waiting for someone to acknowledge me. I hadn't checked in chat. But I just want to make sure that everyone knows.
Or beneficiary to an insurance policy. The other is a life estate, which has to do with real property. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk about bequests. So back one, please. There we go, bequest. So the way bequests work is, it literally is you modify your will to include a grant to the church in there. You add Cleveland Park Church as a full, partial, or contingent beneficiary of your retirement account, whether it's TSP, 401k, an IRA, pension, whichever of those. You would work with the organization that manages that asset to get the church added. The other way is if you have life insurance policy, you can add the church again as a full or contingent beneficiary to your life insurance policy. And you would work with the insurance company to have that, put in the appropriate language to add the church like that. The benefits to you and to your, I guess, principally to your family, you get a deduction on your estate tax. The state tax may not apply to many people. The limits are very high, but if you are fortunate enough that you do have a large amount of assets that might be subject to that, that's one way to reduce your taxable burden to your family and heirs. It also reduces the burden of taxes to your family. And perhaps most importantly, you leave a lasting legacy to your church that can take your money and it lives on in the good works of this church. So that's a quick overview of bequests. Any questions about bequests before I move on to the next and last item? Yeah. Okay. I think we're ready. We're gonna take Ann Ordeman's question now. So Ann, if you go ahead and ask your question, we're gonna unmute here so we can hear it.
Okay, great. One is a statement. Can you hear me? Hello? Yes. Okay. One is a statement that the required minimum distribution age has changed this year from 70 and a half to 72. So if like me, I was 70 and a half in 2019. So I still have to do it. It didn't like grandfather me in, but it does change for anyone who wasn't yet 70 and a half this year. It's to your advantage to wait till you're 72 to do the qualified stocks. The other thing is I'm kind of confused about, we have an donor advised fund, but I wouldn't use both that and the qualified. I just have what I did last year with the required minimum distribution is we just figured out what we did need and then donated that to different charities. And so, for example, if I'm supposed to make this up like $10,000 and I only need $9,000 to live, then I would take $1,000 and a check goes. But for me, the advantage, as you were saying, is I figure that after I take out taxes, I would get $660 of that after taxes. But if I give it to the church, $1,000 would go to the church. But I don't, and it does not count as it just decreases. You don't count it. You can't double count it. You can't count it as a contribution and have it lower. It just is lowering. If you want to count as a contribution, then you do donor advised fund, which I see no advantage to doing donor advice fund. We use T. Rowe Price, except that I would use with other money, like put in there. But with donor advice funds, at least ours now went down to a minimum of $100. So that's nice because you can do smaller amounts through a donor advice fund. But I didn't understand if you were saying both you could do IRA money into donor advice fund. I'm confused about that. And the other thing is when I've gone to, I can't find Cleveland Park United Church of Christ. You know, they use Gold Star, Charity Navigator. That's where they get their lists from. I've never seen Cleveland Park United Church of Christ when I search for it. Are you in the Gold Star and the Charity Navigator, all those databases? Is the church in there? That's my question.
So I guess on the first point about the change in the age of the qualified charitable distribution, thank you for pointing out that correction. And that's another reason why good to consult with a financial advisor, not take my word for it.
Yeah, at this moment in time, is what we were thinking, and you're right, Ann, I missed that and I knew it, that in the future that the age is going up after this, so, great, thank you for bringing that up.
Regarding qualified charitable distribution versus donor advised fund, the two may not be appropriate to do at the same time. Regarding the benefits of donor advised fund, to me, I see the principal benefit of that being, say you get a lump amount of money that you want to use for charitable giving for this in coming years. You can deposit all that now, like say you get $50,000 from a bonus or an inheritance, and you can deposit that entire amount in your donor advised fund, get an immediate tax deduction for the full $50,000. That year you may choose to then itemize your deductions to get that full benefit. Then in future years, you can take the standard deduction while still doing your donating through the donor advised fund down to the lower limits, as Ann correctly pointed out, where you can give smaller amounts to charities you want to support with a smaller amount of money. So, you know, it kind of depends on where you are and what your strategy is and what your particular circumstances are.
The other was not being able to find,
Yes.
So when I can only speak for myself, when I spoke to my Fidelity guy, I just told him, I said, this is where I want to, put this money. And he said, oh, I'm assuming it's a church and it's a nonprofit 501c3. And I said, yes, he found it. And again, I don't know what he did or where he went, but he found it.
The other thing to give, on our donate page, we have the tax ID for the church.
Yeah, and I gave him that.
Yeah, and
I did provide that information to him, and he found it and it got set up. So
in theory, with the tax ID, I would hope that you can find it. If not, if you still have problems, I guess I'd encourage you, write to me and we'll try and figure it out. Then I guess, unless there are any other questions, we'll move on to life estate, which is the last item in our presentation. Seeing none. So what this is where you can actually donate property to the church. And the basic essentials of it are, you donate the property, maybe it's upon your passing. You say, I want my house or my vacation property or my farm or whatever to be owned by the church. And you make an agreement with the church where you agree to maintain the property, pay the taxes, pay the mortgage. Upon your passing, maybe you might have a requirement in there that your spouse continues to live at your property until his or her passing. Then when all the life estate holders have passed away, the property comes over into the possession of the church. church will typically sell the property. And once, then the church gets the proceeds from that after paying off whatever debts that, mortgage debt or whatever else is on that property. So that's the basic essentials of that. This is one where, it'd be smart to work with your lawyer, with a financial planner, to think this out carefully so that things go as you intend them to go, and that people that you want to have taken care of get taken care of as part of that.
Yeah, if I may, John, just that, my brother is a financial planner, so I asked him, this is one comment he made was, you really have to work with a lawyer to do this, because there are concerns of other heirs, and it may depend on certain states might have different laws that apply to this. So it's very important, if this is something you'd like to do or you want to contemplate, to talk with a lawyer.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd ask is, if you're considering this, talk to us too, so that we want to make sure we're prepared, because the church would need to have, we'd have to engage legal help to be able to accept this donation. And we want to make sure we're ready and able to accept a generous donation like that. Any questions about life donation? Or life estate, I'm sorry. Or about any of the other topics we've covered, since we are pretty much at the end of our presentation for today. And seeing none, I guess you'll see our my contact information and that of our financial secretary, Robert Glass, are posted on the slide deck. I encourage you to reach out to one of us if you have questions. We'll try to answer as best we can. And I guess I would just emphasize once again, thank you very much for your support of the church. However you do it, thank you for supporting our mission and our works. And thank you to Cindy for joining me and providing some advice and some of her knowledge in all this presentation.
Thank you, John.
So, yeah.